I think there are some very interesting characteristic, if not idiosyncratic, features of natural philosophy in England in the 2 decades after the Restoration, from 1660 through to the 1680s. One certainly is the, I think, rather complicated relationship between the natural philosophy pursued in the universities at Oxford and Cambridge by residents of the universities who were therefore divines, priests in the Church of England typically, and a surprisingly large group, set of groups really, of natural philosophical inquirers based in London and also in the provinces. One must never forget the way in which there's a great deal of what you might call pastoral natural philosophy at this period, pursued in the great country houses, in the vicarages of rural England, and in some of the towns, indeed. So socially, it's a very heterogeneous group who pursue this inquiry. I think a second point is that the dominance of traditional forms of natural philosophy, read over from the authoritative texts of Aristotle, of Galen, of Ptolemy, is still absolutely in force right through this period. The standard curriculum at the colleges, the standard patterns of natural philosophical reasoning have still not changed very much since the period of the High Middle Ages and the Renaissance. So the new Latin classics done into updated humanist form in the 1500s and early 1600s are, I think, texts which are given renewed authority. So the young Newton, when he's in his early 20s, is absolutely exposed to that classical scholastic tradition. But on the other hand, there are then, thirdly, some features of English natural philosophy which foreigners from the rest of Europe recognized at once. One was the surprisingly widespread interest in and fascination with new forms of natural philosophy, what some writers at the time called the brisker part of the universities, the men gathered round the Inns of Court, in the newly founded coffee houses and social networks of London. They were fascinated by challenging, as we might say, cutting-edge forms of natural philosophy, some of which certainly looked rather heretical. Forms of atomism, for example, introduced in the tradition from Gassendi through the writings of men like Walter Charlton. There was a strong mechanical philosophical tradition which tended to insinuate, it was always dangerous to assert, that all there is in the world is matter moving, thus raising really important theological questions about whether there's evidence of souls and spirits in nature acting in the world. The dangers of atheism, the dangers of heresy are clearly very much there. And then, perhaps most notoriously, a highly visible organisation at Gresham College and the networks around Gresham College, which certainly and unambiguously claimed the writings of Francis Bacon as its inspiration. There's been a great deal of discussion, both then and now, about what that Baconian appeal means and meant. And then, I think finally, and probably most importantly for Newton's career, there's an emerging culture of instrument making, of practice, of artisanal work in areas as widely distributed as assaying, metallurgy, mineralogy, glassworking, distillation, brewing, and so on, which overlaps with other traditions, with natural magic, with practical chemistry. These would be very important themes in natural philosophy, and very important, it seems to me, for understanding Newton's early work.